But you didn't read the pad, you didn't read the sign on those.
Well, I probably read it, but it would have gone in one knothole and out the other probably at the time. But so, you know, looking back, I take it with greater seriousness than I would have at the time.
You know, also, in 2005, you accused the President, George Bush at the time, of plotting an intergalactic war. And I wanted to ask you about that. I think, I have a quote here, I believe it says, the United States military are preparing weapons which could be used against the aliens, and they could get us into an intergalactic war. Without us ever having any warning, the Bush administration has finally agreed to let the military build a forward base on the moon, and which will put them in a better position to keep track of the goings and comings of the visitors from space, and to shoot at them if they so decide.
Yeah, well, I want to deny the quote that you used.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure,
Right.
I'm just...
But most of the rest is correct.
Okay.
That they, in my opinion, have been developing
Just the
weapons.
basic of it, right.
Yeah, they've been developing weapons that are, in my opinion, designed to deal with extraterrestrials. They've certainly been designing tracking ways of finding out where they're going and when they're coming and going and all of that sort of thing. And I think even though the Army had been trying to get a base on the moon for years, I think that President Bush finally gave permission for them to start going ahead with it.
Right.
And so this is really just kind of routine if you get into the military orbit of what was going on, because they have taken this whole phenomenon very seriously.
Right. Yes.
And General Twining designated them as enemy aliens right from the beginning.
Exactly.
And I don't know that that designation has ever been withdrawn.
Right. I don't think it has.
I think it's a good thing we should try and find out.
Yes.
Ask Secretary Gates if
Yes.
anybody has ever withdrawn it, and if so, when was it done? I think it still applies.
Yeah.
And what some of us fear, of course, knowing General Eisenhower's reservation about the people into whose hands all of this technology fell, that it might be just used as an excuse for spending another few $100 billion of the taxpayers' money, providing lots of promotions for generals and more business for the industrial industries that support the war machine.
Yep.
So they have a motive for doing all of this, which they say, oh well, we're concerned. Maybe there's some friendly people up there, but maybe there are some that aren't so friendly, and we can't take a chance. So we've got to have all this stuff ready in case they should start shooting at us. Well, if you go back in the history of the last 60 years, we're the ones that have started all the shooting.
Yes. Yes.
And sure, they have retaliated in a few cases, and I think any fair person would say, well, if you shoot at me, and my life's in danger, I may want to take a crack back at you, rather than just saying, you know, kill me, my life's done, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but all of the initiative, the hostile initiative, has been on our part, rather than vice versa.
Yes.
So I think this is something that has to be examined very closely. And as part of the disclosure process, I would like to see that come out, and I would like to see people cross-examined under oath who say, well, there's a real threat. Because, you know, why do you say that? How many times have you been subject to attack? And were they provoked? And could you give us information to prove that that is so? And not just speculation, which would be good for maybe your purposes, which may not be in the best interest of the United States or in the world. So it's a toughie. And I like Carol Rosin's presentation to the Congress, and it is realistic. If there's going to be exploration, you can't stop the military from trying to fly to wherever they're trying to fly to, and don't really want to, but you don't want them to take off saying, well, we're armed to the teeth, and the first person that even looks at us sideways, we're going to shoot first and ask questions afterwards. Because that is exactly what's been wrong with the world for thousands of years. And we don't want to say, well, okay, well, let's extend our barbarism to other parts of the galaxy, see? And so I think it's something we really have to dig into. And
I think it's fantastic that you're part of that. That's really wonderful. You know, I'm curious about you mentioned seeing a report by Peter Jennings on the subject, and tell me about that and how that came about.
The ABC did a 2-hour special.
Yeah, right.
And he was a Canadian, and
Right, that's right.
And a friend of mine was the one who told me, actually the friend was the same guy that sent me the book, and he insisted that I watch this special because I was busy at the time, and I usually said he'd send me a lot of stuff, and I said, well, I haven't got time to read it, and just pile it up. And I think he was counting on me to get more and more involved as time went on, and finally his faith paid off, and I proved to be what he had hoped for.
Oh.
He picked me really because he thought I would be fair and just in my decisions and in my judgments, and so he was the one that got me interested, and I watched that, and I could see the wobbling back and forth because the skepticism, the reality. But you watch all these ex-policemen and pilots and military pilots say, hey, I've seen one of those things. And you say, are these people all liars? And maybe one or two, I don't know if one or two are or not, but I don't know how ABC would put together a 2-hour show and only pick out liars.
Exactly.
So
I wanted the same thing.
So I said to myself, hey, these guys are telling the truth.
Right.
And so there's got to be something. There's got to be something to this.
That's interesting. Also, there was something about Stephen Hawkins commenting on ETs that I think you had a comment on that said that though most this is Stephen Hawking's quote, though most extraterrestrial life could be only in the form of small animals, there could be also nomads looking to conquer and colonize other worlds. What was your reaction to that statement?
Well, I really, to be truthful, thought it was irresponsible.
Right.
Here's a great scientist who obviously isn't up to date on what's going on in the world, and portraying a picture that was so far from reality. It was just the reality of his imagination that it was highly misleading. And consequently, I thought it was irresponsible, and I said so. Right. And I would say so again. If I was talking to him, I would say the same thing. I really am interested in these scientists who are saying, we've got to find a planet out there which will sustain life. And I said, well, why don't you go talk to your own government? They can give you a list of them.
How do you handle your critics or disbelievers in the whole UFO thing? Like, they tell you that's a bunch of bunk. How do you deal with that? Because they're misinformed. They haven't done the research at all.
I've got one today, and I was just figuring out whether I was going to give him an impolite reply or polite. But I've decided on the polite, and say that he's really proving the point. He said, how could the government keep it quiet all these years? And I'm going to say, in a very nice way, that well, you're providing proof that they've been able to, and then give them the URLs of some of the speakers from the Congress, and say, don't take my word for it, go and see some of the stuff that these guys have accumulated and see what you think of it.
I'd like to flesh out, if we could, just that one chapter that you have. And I understand, I really appreciate your approach with your book and trying to create a mainstream bridge to the issues at hand, the important issues, which of course is our environment, our economy. And you have that, you slid that little UFO chapter, and I'd like to explore and flesh out what that chapter said. I haven't read your book, sir, but what did you speak about in that chapter, and what was your intention?
Mostly I just went through my experience, and then my interviews with these people that we were just talking about, and others, and then some conclusions as to how many species there might be that we've identified already, what the ships look like, the variety from the small foo-foo fighters up to allegedly motherships mile wide. And
wow, that's a chapter. That's a great chapter, Paul.
It's a good primer.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what it's designed for, is to say, well, hey,
get your teaser, a little teaser.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends who have read it have been influenced because they trust me.
Right.
And they say, hey, if you're saying this, maybe there's something to it. Yeah. And this is the way it was intended. It's not a book on UFOs, but it's a book that gets people, I hope, a little bit interested. And maybe saying, well, if Hellyer says so, it could be so, or maybe it is so, depending on how well they know me. And then, of course, it has the relation that I draw, of course, between the reverse engineering and the possibility of using it to save the planet. And so it ties into the book. It's all part of a whole, comes together. But it's mostly a primer to get people interested.
When you mention different species, how many species do you think it is? What did you write?
Well, I don't know. When I had Ed Mitchell, Apollo astronaut, for dinner one night, and we were bantering back and forth, and he said, how many species do you think there are? And I said, well, somewhere between 2 and a dozen. He said, yeah, that's what I think too.
Really?
I think I list six in my book.
Yeah, you have 6 in your book.
Yeah. And I have since learned about the tall whites, which I was unfamiliar with before, but I had a long chat with somebody who had worked there and who got to know them and to trust them and vice versa, and told me a lot about them, and I'll be mentioning those very briefly my address here.
Well, what a fantastic vision for our planet and our world. Thank you, Paul Hellyer, for all your work and efforts and what you're doing, and we're just so thankful for you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. You've been most kind, much too kind, but I just feel a responsibility. I'm nearing the end of my role, and I feel that as long as there's a problem, and there sure is at the moment, that I have to do what little I can to contribute to a solution.
And it's a great contribution, and thank you, sir. And that's all for us now. I'm Apollo, and thank you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, sir.
Okay.